Welcome to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, the show that helps you sort through all of the trends, new and old, of the fitness world. We'll talk about yoga, running, Zumba, weightlifting, and everything in between. Whether you've got your fitness routine down to a science or you're just starting out and looking for direction, you'll find educational and entertaining information on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ty Adranis, and I'll be taking you on this fitness journey for about the next 60 minutes or so. And on the agenda for today's episode, we're going to be talking about something near and dear to my heart. I mentioned it a little bit last time during the Peloton broadcast, but I'm diabetic. I'm a type 1. I'll be explaining to you all the differences in diabetes and all that. And I'm going to be talking to you about fitness and diabetes. Everybody knows a diabetic. Everybody does. So, if whether it's a family member, a loved one, a friend, whatever, or yourself, I'm going to give you some information that can help you and them out. And hopefully, maybe you'll even, if you're not a diabetic, you'll just understand us a little bit better. So if you hear normally, like if I had any alerts go off on my insulin pump, because I'm on an insulin pump, I would stop the recording and rewind it. But just so you can hear what we deal with, if you hear a bunch of R2D2 sounds, and I'm expecting some soon because I just ate, that is what an insulin pump sounds like. It looks like a little pager that somebody wears with like a little medical tubing coming out of it. Or if you ever see somebody with like a white blocky thing on their tricep or on their upper arm, that's a sugar sensor. So like if you do ride Peloton, because that's what we talked about last time, and you ever notice Robin, the instructor Robin, she's a diabetic. She's got the little sensor there on her tricep, and it switches spots, but it's always on one tricep or the other. At any rate, let's go ahead and dive right into it, because, diabetes is a complicated subject and there's a lot of different variants of being a diabetic. So what is type 1? What is type 2? And how is that any different than, say, like a hypoglycemic? Okay. Well, diabetes is really like a problem with your islet cells, ISLET, that are contained in your pancreas. That is where insulin is made. Okay. And what insulin does is it takes the glucose that your body processes your food into, and insulin converts that to ATP, or liquid energy, for your body. And anything that your body doesn't use ATP wise gets stored as fat. And when fat gets metabolized, guess what? It gets converted back into ATP. Okay. So and glucose also. We'll get into that in a minute. But type 1 diabetics are diabetics that have no control. Their body has no control over insulin production. And in a lot of cases like mine, I have zero insulin production. None. Because my diabetes happened when I was in the military. I had an accident that damaged my pancreas. And long story short, I no longer have islet cells. In fact, if I did have islet cells, more than likely my white blood cells would go kill them off. So I have no control over my sugar. None. The only way I can control it is through the use of diet and insulin. That's type 1. Okay. Type 2 may not have to take insulin. Sometimes they take pills. Sometimes they're able to just regulate it through diet. But type 2 is totally different. Type 2 is what I like to call lazy islet cells. Their islet cells just don't handle simple carbs very well, don't handle spikes in sugar very well. They have to eat like complex carbohydrates or even go pure keto or whatever. And hypoglycemics are the complete opposite of a type 2. Their islet cells work overtime. So if they drink a glass of orange juice and it spikes their blood sugar, their body goes overtime making insulin, and then it drops their blood sugar super, super, super low. Okay, so they're all three kind of related. And either type 2 or hypoglycemics can become type 1 diabetics eventually if they don't work on their stuff. So diabetics, we don't really count calories. We count carbs. I know, sounds weird, but you can count calories, but I count carbs because carbs are directly related to how much insulin I take. I take 1 unit of insulin, which is about 1/100th of a cc. I take 1 unit of insulin for every 12 carbs I eat. Okay. And my insulin pump is very exact. It gets down to 0.05 units of insulin. So if 1 is 100th, 0.1 is 1,000th. Now we're talking about 5 or what is it? 50, 10,000, something like that when you get down to 0.05. Math has never been my strong suit. Well, yes, it has, but whatever. ATP, we already talked about that. That's liquid energy and it gets stored as fat if you don't use it. So exercise is essential for a diabetic. So what happens for a diabetic? Like whenever I have an issue, like if I'm having a high blood sugar, it frustrates me intensely when somebody says, do you need a candy bar? No, that is the exact opposite of what I need. Okay, type 2s, when they get in trouble, generally need a candy bar because they're usually low. But yes, there are times when I will need a candy bar. That's generally when I have a low blood sugar. Just remember, what does a candy bar have in it? What does orange juice have in it? It has a buttload of sugar. All right. So if you have a high sugar, you want to sugar away, not sugar in, right? So no, don't offer a diabetic a candy bar unless they say they're having a low. So what happens to you when you're having a high? Well, basically what's happening is your body can't metabolize the sugar, the glucose that's in your system. So it does all kinds of crazy stuff to try to get rid of it. First off, it flushes your fluids. Okay. It's trying to flush that glucose out of you. So you feel the need to pee a lot. All right. And that's not good because there's so much glucose in your blood, it is kind of turning into like this maple syrup viscosity, right? It's hard for your heart to pump it through and it's hard for it to get through your capillaries. So a lot of diabetics end up having problems with their feet and their hands because their circulation sucks. All right. Or eyes or organs. And we'll get into what rogue blood vessels are later and all that. And I'm giving you all this background because it's important so that you can understand what we're going to talk about, which is all the fitness, right? So, and during a low, and you're also super thirsty because your body's flushing out all these fluids. Your body also knows it's dehydrated. So that's crazy. And your body isn't getting any ATP because no glucose is getting converted. So it's metabolizing more and more fat and trying to convert that into ATP. And what's that doing? It's actually boosting your blood sugar even more. So it's like this really vicious cycle. And we're going to talk about some of the health hazards having to do with that later on in the program. But that's what happens during a high. During a low, oh, there it is. There's my insulin pump telling me that my sugar is actually high. Which it is. It's very high right now because it's spiked. I had a treat because I'm recording this on a weekend. And, so I had a treat for breakfast. I had a little bit of maple syrup on my almond flour pancake. We'll get into recipes later. So that's what happens on a high. On a low, quite the opposite happens. Your blood gets really thin. Because there's no sugar in it, making it more viscous. And so, and you start your body is fueled by sugar. Your brain patterns are and everything. You start feeling adrenaline rushes. Your body knows something is wrong and you could actually go into a coma. It's pretty bad. So if a diabetic needs a candy bar or a glass of orange juice, get it quickly. Okay. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about how diabetes works, specifically insulin cramps. And we're going to get into planning a workout. Insulin cramps have have a lot to do with that. You want to be very careful with that. So we'll be right back after these messages talking about fitness and diabetes.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Ty Adranis, and this podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We're talking about diabetes and fitness. So, in the previous segment, we talked a lot about what diabetes is, the difference between the types of diabetes, and what happens when you have a high versus a low, and why do you have a high or a low. So, why do your sugars go up when you're working out? Like sometimes they'll drop. Like if you're doing cardio, but not a whole lot of like strenuous fat burning work, you're just doing cardio and whatnot, your sugars could go down, but sometimes they'll go up. Why is that? Well, quite simply, it's because, and generally it happens for me after a workout, not during, but during usually they'll drop. But after a workout, my sugars go up because my fat's getting metabolized. My body's eating my fat. Right? And it's turning it into glucose. And I need to get rid of that. So I need to take some insulin. Okay. So that's why. So I mentioned insulin cramps. So what is an insulin cramp? Like why do diabetics get a lot of cramps in their feet and their hands and their legs? Well, it's really simple, really. Insulin is actually like an anti-potassium. Sometimes if somebody has too much potassium in their blood and it's affecting their heart, sometimes doctors will actually give them insulin to counteract that excess of potassium. So one of the biggest things with cramping is a lack of potassium. That's why your muscles cramp. That's why like football players you see them eating bananas on the sidelines. Okay. It's not just because bananas are tasty, although I recently discovered that they are. I hated bananas growing up and I'm 46 now. And it's only like last year that I discovered I liked bananas. I have a funny story associated with that, by the way. So I'm at the Peloton studio doing my first ever Peloton ride in studio. It was for a friend's 100. I think I was only 50 rides in at the time, maybe 75. But I'm there and I'm having a low blood sugar and all she's got is a banana. And, the drinks at the studio are ridiculously expensive and the class was about to start. So I take this banana from her. She runs out to the lockers. I make sure they don't close off the studio and lock her out because it was like this big deal. She comes back. She gives me the banana and we start riding, right? And I know I'm going to go low. I'm not low yet. Okay. So in the middle of this ride, this live ride that's being broadcast to thousands of people, my sugar starts going really low. So there I am on camera munching away at a banana during this really hard Jess King Sweat Steady ride from December 2018. It was pretty funny. At any rate, so how do you manage insulin cramps? Well, what I do is, and it seems to be the quickest remedy for me, I don't eat bananas because I don't want to spike my sugar in addition. Because if I spike my sugar, I got to take more insulin and that's more potassium. It's getting drawn out of my body and it's too many variables to manage at one time. So I actually go down, any supermarket, GNC, any place that sells supplements will sell you potassium tablets. So I will take one and only one if I'm having really bad cramps. And these are cramps, not like female cramps. These are like cramps in your hands and feet or in your calves, like so bad that I have to jump up and down on my foot to get it to flatten out because my toes pointed. That bad. So I take potassium then and only then, because if you take too much potassium, it can actually cause heart failure. You don't want too much potassium in your system. So diabetics, if you're listening, don't be taking potassium pills every day. It should be used as and I'm not a doctor, so talk to your doctor first, okay? I'm not offering you medical advice. I'm just telling you what I do. Talk to your doctor first and they'll tell you the same thing. Be very, very careful with taking potassium. I will take 1 tablet if I'm having really bad cramps, and in about 10 or 15 minutes, they'll subside and go away. If they don't subside and go away, I don't take another one. That's when I'll eat a banana or eat a tomato or something that has a high potassium content in it. I will not take more than 1 potassium pill a day. And in general, it's usually not more than 1 a week. That's how careful you have to be. Think about it this way. When people are sentenced to the death penalty, the drug that stops their heart is potassium. Okay. That's the lethal injection, right? Is potassium. So be very, very careful with it. Okay. I'm not quite sure why it's not regulated, why they just sell them as supplements, because it could end badly for somebody overdoing it. So here's some good cardio workouts for a diabetic. All right. You don't really want to, do a lot of running, because diabetic feet, you don't want to cause blisters on your feet. One of the main reasons diabetics lose their feet is because they have poor circulation. And so if they get a cut or a blister on their foot, it's really bad. I'm never without shoes or slippers, even in the house. You don't want to cut or blister on your feet because if it gets infected, the white blood cells won't take care of it well enough. You could get sepsis. I almost lost my left foot once because I got a rug burn on the top of my foot because I tripped and fell and slid across the floor. Well, this was at a friend's house and he didn't really vacuum very often. This is when I was really young and going to college. Well, it turned out it got infected. I started getting the red spidery veins and all that. And luckily, thank God, I was fine. I got it taken care of. But I could have easily lost my foot. Don't do anything that can cause blisters. Don't do anything that can cause internal bruising or injury. Running is very hard on your feet. It's very good for you if you're a normal person. Don't do it if you're a diabetic. That's why I use a Peloton. Use a bicycle. Don't go extreme mountain biking like I did or anything like that. But, bicycle, low impact stuff. The ellipticals are good. Bicycles, ellipticals, swimming didn't really do anything for me. It didn't really help me with my weight at all. It was kind of counterproductive, really, because I didn't work my core at all. I mean, believe it or not, you work your core quite a bit when you're on a bicycle. So, try stationary bikes or even just riding regular bicycles. Be careful on the street. Don't get hit by a car. Be careful off road. Don't end up with a stick under your eye like my friend. Site fat is a big problem, especially if you're on an insulin pump, because we insulin pump people tend to use the same sites over and over again for our infusion set, which is where the insulin actually enters our body. So I used to use it along my belly, and that was a bad mistake because I ended up with all this crystallized fat there, which is extremely hard to get rid of. I'm pretty much ideal weight. I'm feeling great right now, but I still have this belly fat that will not go away. I'm not about to go get it lasered or lipoed out, but it's almost impossible. So you got to move your site around. Right now I'm using the tops of my thighs a lot and the backs of my thighs. It's a great spot. You can use anywhere with muscle. You can use your back right by where your kidneys are. You can use, your belly. You can use all that stuff. So you should also change your workout for your sugar level. It's really important. If you're having a high sugar level, reduce the amount of cardio you're doing, do more weights. Okay. You don't want to push your heart too hard when your blood is like syrup. Right now, I would not hop on the bike because I have a sugar that's pretty close to 300 because of that maple syrup. It's coming down pretty quick, but stuff like that does spike your sugar. So don't, because most diabetics die from heart failure. Okay. You don't want to give yourself a heart attack. So reduce the amount of cardio if you're having a high. If you're having a low, just wait a few minutes till you can get it up. I generally start working out with a sugar around 150. By the time I'm done, it's around 100. And for God's sake, make sure you stretch afterwards. It's extremely important for you to stretch after you're done working out, especially your extremities, your fingers, your toes, your feet, your calves. Extremely important to stretch for a diabetic. When we come back, I will tell you why. So stick with us. We will be right back after these messages.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ty Adranis. And today we're talking about fitness and diabetes. Hopefully by now, after this podcast, you understand what diabetes is and how serious it is. And so I was talking a little bit about how important stretching is for a diabetic. It is. It's extremely important. And one of the reasons is to make sure that your muscles don't tighten up, especially in the extremities, because your circulation sucks as a diabetic. So it helps get some blood flow out there. It helps squeeze the toxins out. If you have enough money, invest in going and getting massages. If you're a diabetic, especially hand massages, foot massages, leg massages, arm massages. It helps squeeze out the toxins from your muscles, including, lactic acid and all that good stuff. Okay. So in this segment, we're going to be talking about food choices. And specifically, I'm calling this health with flavor because I'm a cook. I love cooking. I auditioned and made it onto MasterChef season 5. They didn't keep me because I was having some legal issues. Specifically, I was in a custody battle. I have my kids now, thank God. But I was in a custody battle back then, and they don't generally like people with legal issues. But I did well enough to where I auditioned in San Francisco, where 30,000 people auditioned. And I was one of 2 to make it. So that's pretty good, I think. So I know about cooking. Okay. And I love good flavor. There's no way I'm going to eat bland crap. Pardon my French. I'm sorry. I let the C word, not the really bad one, but a bad enough one slip. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. But I'm not going to eat stuff like that. I'm going to eat good tasting stuff. So what do? I'm about as severe a diabetic as you can possibly imagine. Okay. So what do I do for cooking? Well, the first thing I do is I think of alternate choices for ingredients. Okay. For instance, I told you that today I had a treat. Okay. I had a waffle with, a nice big Belgian waffle with some fried eggs, over medium on top, 2 eggs. And some maple syrup. Usually I wouldn't do the maple syrup thing because that syrup is a huge source for carbs, and carbs are bad. I mean, you're supposed to have some as a type 1. As a type 2, you can go full keto, but I'll explain why that's bad for a regular, type 1 diabetic in a sec. So what do? I don't use regular flour. I use almond flour. And if you're the mixed type person, you can go to like a Whole Foods. They have great paleo and keto pancake and waffle mixes. All you have to do is add water. I'm a big fan of doing it from scratch, but whatever you do, you. Okay. As Corey from Peloton says, you do you, boo. I can't believe I just said that. Some people are probably going to kill me for saying that, but at any rate, you do you. Okay. Stevia or Splenda, in place of sugar. And I count carbs in everything I do. So let's talk a little bit about one of the big diet fads out there, keto, and why it's not good for a type 1, but why it's amazing for a type 2 diabetic. So a type 2 diabetic still can make their own insulin. And so they can go into a state called ketosis when they do keto. Basically, all you're eating is protein, no carbs. Okay, so no carbs at all when you want to go into ketosis. And that's the key to the keto diet. That's how all these people on the keto diet are losing weight. And that is great for a type 2 because carbs means you have to make insulin. And since you're kind of not really, you have slow insulin, as I like to call it, for a type 2, that's great. They stay stable. They stay stable as heck, and they're loving life. For a type 1, ketosis is too similar to ketoacidosis, which is something that can kill a diabetic type 1. And so going into a state of ketosis quite literally could kill you. There's a lot of chemical reasons why, but no responsible internal medicine doctor will ever tell you to try the keto diet if you're a type 1 diabetic. Okay, so all you have to say is when some other diabetic is telling you, hey, I do the keto diet and it's great for me, just be like, yeah, you're a type 2, I'm a type 1. It'll kill me. So instead of no carb cooking, it's really important for a type 1 to do low carb cooking. That way your body is still getting an energy intake, okay? And you can take your insulin, but it's not super simple carbs like maple syrup was a bad choice today. Every once in a while you need a treat though, okay? But you want complex carbs like instead of white flour, use wheat flour or almond flour. Or go full cauliflower if you really want to, but make choices that are low carb and keep track of every single carb you're ingesting because how much insulin you take is extremely related to how many carbs you're intaking. Okay. So I even do meal prep. Like I just made a giant pot of chili. Chili is a great meal. Go easy on the beans because the beans are simple carbs usually. You know, instead of kidneys, I usually use like some black beans, but not very many because I'm from Texas and other Texans will hang me from a tree if I, by the neck until dead if I use beans. But I just made a big pot of chili and chili's great because it's low carb. Tastes delicious. It's spicy. It's good. And it's really, really good for you. And it's low carb. And the carbs that are in it are complex carbs. So it's good. Pre and post workout is really important too. Like pre-workout, I'll take maybe a little bit of creatine and there's this stuff from Isogenics, but everybody has something like it for a pre-workout. It's called Amped. The stuff from Isogenics. I don't know what you would get that's like a generic brand, but it's very similar. It's kind of like, it hydrates you. It's kind of like a powdered Gatorade-ish thing with some other supplements in it. So pre-workout, you want to do something to hydrate yourself. You want to do something to get the nutrients into you that your body is about to use up, and you want to keep your energy up. Post-workout, it's extremely important to build your muscles back up with some protein, whether that's a protein shake or whether that's eating some eggs. Try to go easy on the yolks. You know, I try to do egg white omelets a lot just because another problem for diabetics is our cholesterol can go up. And one of the leading causes of death for diabetics, as I said before, is heart failure. You know, heart attacks are a big part of that. I also do one meal a day sometimes, you know, the OMAD diet. And you have to be under pretty darn good control as a type 1 to be able to do that. A better option for you if you're kind of out of control is to try to stabilize yourself with a lot of small meals throughout the day, like 6 or 7 really small meals. But because I like to eat something really delicious, I'll eat once a day because that'll be my entire carb count for the entire day. So we're going to go back to another break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about how to handle diabetic issues during exercise, and what kind of issues they could face from exercise itself. So stick with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, we're back. Welcome back to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Ty Adronis, and today we're talking about fitness and diabetes. Yep, that's right. Diabetes. I'm a diabetic. I'm a type 1 on an insulin pump, and there is no doubt in my mind you're about to hear it go R2D2 again, meaning it's going to make a bunch of beeps and boops. But I'm going to let that roll in the background so you can kind of get a sense for what we diabetics deal with. So what kind of issues could a diabetic face during a workout? Some of them are really obvious, okay? One of them is a low blood sugar. So what do you do in the case of a low blood sugar? Somebody says, oh my God, I'm low. What are the signs that a diabetic is having a low blood sugar? Well, from the diabetic's perspective, if you've ever backed up your car and almost hit a child, that adrenaline rush you feel of the, oh my God, I so almost did something so bad. That is what a diabetic feels. Come on. When they're having a low sugar, they start to get hot. They start to get sweaty. They start to get clammy. They start to get panicky. Some of them, this has only happened to me once or twice, but most diabetics get angry. They get really snappy. That's kind of where those Snickers commercials come from, where they're like, you always get crabby when you're hungry, you know. That's kind of the same thing with a diabetic. But it's really dangerous because if you think about it, like pass out, most people would pass out if their sugar hit like 50 or 60. Diabetics, we're more used to stuff. I've had mine go as low as 20. I've actually had it down in single digits before and still not passed out. But that's not good, by the way. You don't ever want to get that low. But, you know, they could pass out and go into a coma. And you have from zero to, you know, normal blood sugar is 80 to 120, somewhere in there. Okay. So yeah, 0 to 80, that's not a very large room to play with. And high, it's like 120 to like your heart might fail around like 800 or 900 on a blood sugar. If you're not diabetic, more like 400 or 500 because your body's just not used to that. But so it's a much bigger range that you have to play with high versus low. Plus you're not really going to go into a coma. You're just either going to be alive or not with a high. You're going to feel terrible, but yeah. So, with a low, it's a lot more dangerous. So if a diabetic's having a low, if you see a diabetic getting all sweaty and clammy and maybe disoriented, you know they're having a low. Okay. Best thing to do is to just get them some fruit juice. Like orange juice is like literally the best thing for a low because it'll spike you up, but it won't keep you there. So what I'll do is I'll like have a little bit of orange juice and maybe a half a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And a diabetic will try to eat the house down because they're in a panicky mode and they want to feel better right now, but you don't want to let them overdo it. Give them a little bit at a time, wait 5 minutes, a little bit more. So like half a glass of orange juice, you know, a small glass, like a whiskey glass, half of one of those of orange juice and a half peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That should make them okay. But if they're not okay in 5 or 10 minutes, give them another one and then another one. but don't let them overdo it. So that's the biggest problem. Another problem is a high. If you're having a high and you're diabetic, things could get bad real fast, especially if you're exercising, okay? Because you don't want to put that kind of strain on your heart. When you're doing cardio and you're having a blood sugar so high that your blood is, your heart's trying to pump maple syrup through your veins, you want to be careful. Because your heart's literally working 2 to 10 times harder to the same amount of stuff. And when you have that much sugar in your blood, it's not carrying oxygen very well either. So brain problems can start to happen. Orientation can start to get lost. Diabetic might start acting drunk, slurring or whatever, because it's difficult to live when your sugar's that high. I know I don't sound it, even though I told you my sugar was 300, I think it's down in the 200s now. Let's see. No, it did go up a little bit and now it's coming back down. So, I had just eaten. Oh my gosh, I have to sneeze. Don't sneeze, Ty. Okay. So, you want to be very, very careful with the highs. You don't want to push yourself too hard. Go ahead and do some strength stuff. Reduce your cardio. Okay. Make sure you're taking enough insulin and keep a close eye on that blood sugar. So, like I mentioned, if you're having a low, having the juice and snack, like the peanut butter and jelly is great because it keeps your sugar right there. And the orange juice is great because it spikes it up. You also, in case you have a very serious reaction, and if you're very, very low, every diabetic should have what's called a glucagon shot with them, and teach the people that care about them and their work buddies or workout buddies how to use it. And that's the emergency situation thing in case you pass out that will keep you from dying. Okay. So a glucagon shot it's like in this little plastic case, and it looks a lot like an EpiPen or something, but it's not. You open it up and inside there is a vial of white powder, and no, it's not what you think. It's literally just pure glucose, and a syringe that's filled with liquid. And you just put that liquid into the vial using the syringe and then shake it up and then suck it back out with the syringe and inject it into any muscle, not a vein. Okay. Any muscle. Okay. And that will, not a vein, because you don't want to shock the system like that. Put it into a muscle like a tricep or the top of the shoulder or the butt even. You can even shoot it in through clothes. It doesn't matter. It's an emergency. So do that and the person should wake up after a couple minutes. I've only ever had to use my glucagon shot twice. One of them was when I was in the middle of nowhere and had no other sugar sources with me, and I had to give myself the glucagon shot. It saved my life. The other one, I had a friend that was a nurse. She knew how to use one already, and I had passed out. And it's the only time I've ever passed out from a low sugar. So thank you, Laura. Anyway. You also, if you're having a high, you really want to adjust the intensity of your workout. Like I said, keep your cardio to lifting ratio more heavy towards the lifting side. Don't push your heart rate above, say, like, as a 46-year-old man, I know that my maximum heart rate is 189. If I go above 189 or 190, I could die, right? Your heart will stop. That's literally what it means. So when I'm doing cardio, sometimes I'll hit 160s, 170s. I try to stay out of the 180 range. But if I'm having a high sugar, I don't go above like 155. I keep it down well below that, averaging around 120 to 130, at least until my sugar's normalized. So it doesn't mean don't work out. It just means reduce the intensity of your workout. Okay? Don't ever use a high blood sugar as an excuse to not have to work out. Okay. Because as a diabetic, you want to work out. Okay. You don't want to be a fat diabetic. Trust me, I've been a fat diabetic. It's not a pleasant experience. So when we come back from this next break. We're going to talk about a good week's workout, a typical good week's workout, prepping for it and all that good stuff, right after these messages. So stick around.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
We're back. Welcome back to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ty Adronis, and we are talking about diabetes and fitness. I am a type 1 diabetic, and so I'm just kind of talking about my experience with the thing. If you are a diabetic, don't just take my word for anything, go talk to your doctor. Talk to your doctor, tell him about all this stuff. He may tell you I'm off my rocker, but this is my personal experience. So, I'm just giving you my opinion, which, that plus $5 will get you a coffee over at Starbucks. Anyway, so prepping for a workout. I talked about it a little bit. You want to make sure that your body has all of the nutrients that it's going to need to get through the workout. Don't bog yourself down with a bunch of protein and carbs right before a workout unless that's what your workout calls for. Like if you're trying to bulk up or something. But I'm trying to keep my weight down because most diabetics, we can't help it. We gain weight. We gain weight like so fast. So it's really important to keep that caloric deficit as a type 1 diabetic, just being me. So, it's really important to think about what your goals are when you're setting up for a workout. Like, are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to bulk up? Are you trying to tone? Or are you trying to just lose some weight? I started just trying to lose some weight. I mentioned it during the Peloton broadcast. I got a bike for my ex-wife, and she never used it. And I had just finished writing my 4th book, and my body was not looking good. I was about 60 pounds overweight. Got on that bike and dropped that 60 pounds in 6 months. So, that worked for me. What works for you? I don't know. Extrapolate from what I did and figure it out, because you're the only one that knows what will work for you. Any of those diet ads you hear where it's like, oh, this is the number one way to lose weight, for weight loss, and forget that stuff. You got to do what works for you, not what works for the rest of America. You got to do what works for you. And so I'm talking to the diabetics out there and their loved ones, during this particular episode. So what if your goal is to build in bulk? Well, the important part is just adjusting your ratios for your goals. The 3 major points of a workout for me are cardio, which is also a warm-up, weights for strength, and for focusing where the fat is going to get removed from. I find that weights really helps with that. The muscles that you work, the areas that you work, tend to be the ones that lose the fat. That's at least how my body works. And stretching. Stretching is extremely important too. It keeps your muscles from tightening up. It makes it so you can work more days without needing oh my God, I'm going to lay on my back and binge watch you day. So those are the 3 major parts: cardio, weights, and stretching. And so, adjusting the ratio you do of those for what you're trying to do will help you do whatever it is you're trying to do. For instance, if what you're trying to do is weight loss, you really want to focus 90% of your time on cardio. At least I do. I focus 90% of my time on cardio. There are months where I'm only riding the bike, especially if it's months around the holidays where I eat like an an a-hole. Pardon me, where I eat like an a-hole for, 2 months solid and gain, 15 pounds. So I do a bunch of cardio and that helps me drop the weight. Keeping that caloric deficit is the most important part of dropping weight. But then what if you want to just look good naked? You want to get really, really toned. Well, you want to do a mixture of the cardio and a lot of stretching, and stretching strength, like crunches and yoga and Pilates and stuff like that. If you are a Peloton subscriber, I keep talking to Peloton people because that's what I do. Okay. That's my main thing is Peloton. So if you are a Peloton subscriber doing like the Crush Your Core program with Emma or any of the core programs or any of the yoga and Pilates and stretching, and it's extremely important after a workout to do the stretching. So my typical day is I will do a 5-minute warm-up ride, a 20-minute intense ride, and then a 5-minute cool down ride. Sometimes I'll do a longer ride, like Saturday. I just did a 45-minute super kick your ass ride by Alex Toussaint. So it just depends. But I'll do that. That's my cardio. That's how I eat up the calories that I ate. And then I will do a Crush Your Core program, which is, it's like a mixture of yoga, stretching, and Pilates. And it will kick your butt all over the place. It's great. That's one of the reasons I'm thankful for all of their instructors that are like dancers, because dancers have the best cores out there. So also, like, you want to take a real big look at like your hydration. It's really important, especially for a diabetic, to stay hydrated. And by the way, all of those ratios, you want to adjust them based on your sugar. When I'm riding or when I'm exercising, I am constantly monitoring my blood sugar to see where I'm at, because if my sugar's too high, I may be kicking myself into ketoacidosis, which could kill me. And if my sugar's too low, I may work myself into a coma. So it's really important for me to balance it out. So I've always got 2 bottles with me, one with water in it, with maybe some like Mio hydrate, or something like that's kind of like sugar-free Gatorade, and one that's got like Sunny D in it, for sugar if I need it. If I need a quick sugar fix. I've always got 2 bottles with me. So that is extremely important. So why is hydration really important, especially for a diabetic? Well, because we're ugly bags of mostly water. That's why. Okay. You don't want to get dehydrated and work out. You want to be able to sweat. You want the sweat to wash those toxins out of you. You want your blood to be able to pump easily. You don't want it getting too thick because it's dehydrated. Think of it this way. If you're into cooking, think of it like a wine reduction. Okay. When you start getting dehydrated, it's just like that wine reduction, all of the water boiling out of the wine, and it starts getting really thick and kind of syrupy. That's what happens to your blood when you're dehydrated. Well, how are you supposed to get oxygen to your muscles? How are you supposed to get all of the toxins swept away from your muscles and out through your waste systems? How are you supposed to do any of that if you're not hydrated? So, one of the really hard parts for a diabetic is they're used to getting super thirsty when they have a high blood sugar. So when we have a normal blood sugar, we don't really want to drink anything. We're not really thirsty. When you're working out, drink anyway. Make it your goal to get through an entire bottle of water. And I mean like a cycling bottle of water, not one of those tiny little Aquafina bottles or whatever. I mean like a good 12 ounces of water during the course of your hour-long workout. Now, if you think about that, that is about an ounce, right? That is about an ounce every 5 minutes. So that's not too bad. That's just taking a sip every 5 minutes. Do that. It will help you immensely, and it will help keep you on track for your workouts. Hydration getting dehydrated is really a diabetic's worst enemy during exercise. So don't let that happen. Keep that bottle of water on you. Keep that sugar bottle on you, and a sip every 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Okay. So when we come back, we're going to talk about, some gym recommendations and gear recommendations for diabetics. I touched on like, don't run, but I'm going to cover treadmills anyway and what to look for in them. So we're going to talk about all that stuff in the next segment. So stick around. We will be right back after these messages.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
All right, welcome back to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Ty Adranis, and I am your host. We are talking about diabetes and fitness today. I am a type 1 diabetic, as I've told you several times in this program, on an insulin pump, which is about due to start going R2D2ing in just a moment here. So right now we're going to be talking about my gym and gear recommendations and recommendations for travel as well, for staying fit. First of all, like gyms, I'm not really big on gym memberships because they tend to go to waste. Everybody buys them in December and then they have to keep paying them for the rest of the year. And really past February, they're not using them. But I do maintain a Planet Fitness membership, not for their gear, but for the back room. If you get the membership called Black, you can go into the back room and there's like water massage chairs, which are amazing. And there's these infrared booths also that are supposed to help with your circulation. I've noticed my skin is better in there, and diabetics tend to get bad skin pretty easily, kind of like smokers because of bad circulation. So that's actually kind of cool. But if you're doing 24 membership or something like that, that's totally fine. That's your thing. That's totally cool. Just make sure you get one where you can go to the ones where there's swimming pools, because swimming is really good for a diabetic. It's not my thing, but I'd be remiss if I didn't recommend it. So, for me personally, for working out, my apartment complex has a great gym. A fantastic one, complete with its own little isolated area for doing yoga and Pilates with screens so I can stream my online instructors from Peloton or whatever. There's a Sunny spinning bike in there. And so I can use the Peloton app if I'm doing a gym day, or if I'm just doing a cardio day, I can use my Peloton in my apartment. So, that brings me to my next recommendation, which is every diabetic should have a spinning bike. Don't just buy a Peloton because I said I like mine. Okay. But like a Sunny or an Echelon or something that's an actual spinning bike. I'm not one of those like old things with the fan on it and the arms go back and forth. None of those gimmicky ones. Definitely nothing like they have at Planet Fitness that has like the big, fat beach cruiser seat on it. You want something you can stand up on and spin, like sitting down and riding, that's fine for like low impact. But if you're not standing up, you're not engaging your core really. Like you're still engaging it a little bit, but when you stand up, you have to maintain your balance by engaging your core, and it works you all over. So get a spinning bike, or at least go to a gym that has proper spinning bikes, not just like, oh, this is an exercise bicycle where I can sit down and watch TV and move my legs. Okay, that's great if you're 60. Okay, but if you're not 60, or even if you are and you want to do some proper cardio, you want to engage more than just your legs. Okay, so a spinning bike is great because it's low impact. And, if you don't want a spinning bike, if you would rather actually stand up for the whole time, cool. Get yourself like an elliptical because it's low impact. You don't want to put a lot of impact on those feet. You don't want to get blisters. I already explained it to you. Blisters are your enemy as a diabetic. So running, bad for diabetic. Okay. Unless you spend hundreds of dollars on shoes and are constantly updating them and have amazing socks that you know for 100% fact you are never getting a blister. Unless you do that, don't run. Okay. It's just bad. But if you have to, if you are such a running freak that you have to get a treadmill, and I understand, I do. I was like a long distance runner in my younger days. So I understand that running high and all that. If you have to, make sure you get something with like a springy surface on it. Nothing that's super hard. You want something that is on like rubber dampeners. You know, the Peloton tread is way too expensive. I am not recommending that. By the time all is said and done, it's anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 for a treadmill. You know, but there are some good treadmills out there for like $1,200. I'll post one or two of them. I just recommended one to a fellow Peloton rider. Oh, there's my insulin pump as promised, going all R2D2. I just recommended one to a fellow Peloton rider. She picked it up for $1,200. She can take Peloton tread classes on it, and she loves it. Loves it to death. I'll put the same recommendation up on the Facebook and Twitter for you guys. Yoga is amazing for diabetics. It's low impact. It's actually no impact. You can use apps. You don't have to go to an expensive yoga class or some boutique studio. You can go to Amazon Prime. They have free yoga videos that you can take. There are hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. So you can take a different yoga class every day for the rest of your life, just on Amazon Prime. If you are a Peloton rider, there is yoga, in the Peloton app. So, it's great. Absolutely fantastic. So what are some recommendations if you're traveling? And I can't emphasize yoga enough. Yoga, like I used to think it was stupid. I was like, I don't want to do downward dog, but dude, it's actually pretty amazing for you. It keeps your stress levels down, and it's great exercise, especially when combined with some Pilates stuff. So traveling, my favorite places to stay are actually Westin hotels. And the answer is going to be obvious on why. Yes, they have Peloton bikes at Westin's, but they do have great gyms in them. I usually try to look for a place that has a hot tub, not just because I want to go hang out and have some wine in the hot tub, although that would be nice. I'm not going to say I do that because I would like to have hotels actually allow me to stay there. But, although there are places like Four Seasons, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Vail with a friend because we got snowed in there. And they were bringing us champagne out to the hot tub. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. One of the best times of my life. But I recommend Westin's. They have really amazing gyms. Whenever you're traveling, don't leave your gym clothes at home. Don't. And if you're going on vacation in Hawaii, don't even worry about the gym and hotel. Go rent a bicycle and ride around the island. Go actually do things if you're on vacation. But if you're traveling for work, Westin is really great. And, download an app like Calorie King or get the nutritional data sheets. It's part of the FDA rules now with restaurants. They have to be able to provide you with nutritional information. It's a great way to count carbs. I try not to be too much of an a-hole at a really nice restaurant. Like I won't ask for that stuff. But I'll use like Calorie King, which is an app for the phone that'll tell me how many calories, how many carbs, all that good stuff. For those of you that count calories versus someone like me that counts carbs. There's only like really a couple of acceptable options for fast food. For me, it's like either In-N-Out Burger or Whataburger, if you're in Texas. Basically places that are fresh. Everything's fresh, no preservatives, never frozen. Preservatives are bad because a lot of times they will throw your sugar levels off. They're awful for you too. And, like you go to a McDonald's and there's so much sugar in that bun that just the bun is going to throw your sugar levels way off if you're diabetic. And as far as the patties have so much sodium in them that you're going to retain water. And it's just, your ankles will swell if you're diabetic or even if you just retain water naturally. It's just awful in general. So no McDonald's, no Taco Bell. Subway, if you go there, only have the wraps. The bread has so much preservatives in it. It is ridiculous. So that's really all my recommendations. Stay exercising even if you travel. Try to eat healthy. Try not to drink too terribly much alcohol. I did do for a while the wine diet, and it worked pretty well for me, but I'm pretty sure my liver took a pretty bad hit from it, because that was like a bottle of wine a day. And that's just too much. It was so much that I was embarrassed when I went to the doctor, and the doctor asked me how many glasses of wine I drink. And I was just like, 1 a day. And he's like, 1? And I was like, bottle, So, the wine diet did work, but if you're going to do something like that, one of those crazy diets, don't do it for too terribly long. Anyway, thank you for listening. My name's Ty Adronis, and I'm your host for this fitness podcast. So once again, thank you for listening to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, and write a nice review, because it really does help us. And also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you guys later.
You've been listening to the GSMC Fitness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Play, and any app where you listen to podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, we cover it all. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook and listen to these podcasts on YouTube. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.